And we'll start with Vladimir Marinkovic with a presentation on the influence of the human resource capacity on the level of foreign investments in countries of transition, the case of Serbia. You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I will try to present you some problems and position of Republic of Serbia and enterprises, especially small and medium enterprises, in accordance with the level of foreign direct investments. In addition to creating quality surroundings for business and attracting investments, it is vital to create a reformed workforce market and flexible workforce that adjusts itself to global changes on the market. Besides flexible workforce, it is crucial to have an efficient educational system adapted to the needs of the economy in the long run, that will provide practically and theoretically highly educated people who should be a comparative advantage over the competition in the region and in the world. Well-educated workforce is bound to have a great impact on decision of foreign investors where to invest their money. World economic crisis has already increased these standards. We have a problem because in 2009, Serbia attracting €1 billion investment, and our needs are €3 billion. We had a very good position because we are the only country in the world who has a free trade agreement with the Russian Federation. That means we can trade and export our goods in Russian Federation without customs and without taxes. But we have some problems. In Serbia, the need is still noticeable to bring closer social partners and have a closer dialogue and consensus between international companies and the government, faculties, universities, and unions in order to ensure that educational programs are adequately formed according to the new workforce market. In the surrounding of the global economic crisis, we in Serbia and our enterprises will achieve and solve two main problems: strengthening of state role in all sectors of economy, strategies and policies, and the foreign direct investments level. Key aspects to improve foreign direct investment level in Serbia: labor law legislative, and education, productivity and efficiency of workforce. It is graphic key determinants for attracting FDIs. On first, we have market size, political stability, GDP growth, institutional framework, profit repatriation, macroeconomic stability, market size, business climate, presence of competition, and we have price and quality of labor. We have a lack of quality of labor, quality of human resource, and their capability. In Serbia, we will adopt the strategy to attracting of foreign direct investment as a common project of all relevant stakeholders in the country: state, trade unions, business associations, NGO, universities, because how we can attract a high level of foreign direct investment when we have situation of 35 to 50 strikes per day in all of our country. It is very unstable situation, and we need a common strategy as most important aspects of successful implementation of proactive policy of economy development. It is a survey of 2000 to 2010 we attracted 17 billions of foreign direct investments. We had 5 billion in banking system, 2.6 billion in manufacturing industry, 2.4 billion in telecommunication, 1.7 billion in trade, 1.6 billion in real estate, and the biggest investors are companies from following countries: Austria 2.5 billion, Greece 2 billion, Norway 1.6 billion, Germany 1.5 billion. But we have a lack of most important things in attracting of foreign direct investments, that is lack of greenfield and brownfield investments. Greenfield investment is in Serbia. It is a survey. We have companies from Slovenia in trade industry, from United States in industry, in real estates, in Hellenic Petroleum from Greece, in energy 50 million euros, Veropoulos from Greece, in trade industry 34 million, Laiki Bank, banking 33 million, now Himiki oil refinery from Greece 31 million, General Group from Italy 30 million, in insurance industry, Austria insurance 30 million, and Greece in tourism 20 million. And the countries investors is Austria, Norway, Greece, Germany, Netherlands, Slovenia, French, Luxembourg, Hungary, Great Britain, and others. We can see that we have a lack foreign direct investment from Russian Federation, and lack of investment of from Italy. I worked on some comparative study that we find that in Romania, Romania have 20,000 Italian enterprises and foreign direct investments from Italy, and in Serbia we have about 400 to 500. Conclusions that development of human resources capacities as main aspects in establishing of competitiveness and efficiency. New technologies and dynamic science achievements could not be implemented without well-educated and motivated labor force. The main precondition for economic development in countries in transition are well-educated and motivated workforce, and the state policy should be focused on human resources development, especially in development of young talents. And the conclusion is that we can improve our high educated system to improve our human resource, because human resource and quality of human resource is the main thing of attracting of foreign direct investment, especially in countries in transition. One of the biggest problem in countries in transition, as in Serbia, that in 19th, when we had a worse and unstable situation, about 500,000 young people went to outside, went to abroad, to Western Europe and the Western Europe countries and United States countries, and now we have a lack of well-educated and high-educated people who can run with new technologies and science and achievements in science fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vladimir, for this very clear and very disciplined presentation in less than 10 minutes. So thank you very much. Pointed out the importance of education and training of the human resources in order to attract foreign direct investment. So now we pass to Second presentation by, this is a surprise, is Sorina Koti, who has the heavy duty to present the paper of her colleagues. So thank you, Sorina. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Sorina from the University of Thessaloniki, Albania. This is not my paper. There are 12 of my colleagues, but for some problems, I will present their paper. So I would appreciate your help. So the paper is about the waste system in Albania and the critical part of the human resource management. The aim of this research is the implementation of flexible waste system as a critical factor in human resources management. The implementation could only be successful and sustainable if businesses adopt a holistic approach in developing other aspects of human resource practices. This paper is based on some data taken from the region of Korça. It's made a survey including 1,700 questionnaires about their enterprises and the way of doing business. This model is a random selection. These enterprises are taken from the construction, trade, transportation, and service sector. For the management of the data is adopted a qualitative and quantitative analysis for identification of the problems. The largest single sector in terms of employment were trade, about 37%, and industry, 33%. The largest single sector in terms of number of establishments was trade, about 55%. The majority of the establishments surveyed would be classified as micro, 94%, 3 small enterprises, 2% medium, and 1% is large. So, by taking in consideration these figures, we see that 1% is a large business, which consists in just 15 businesses. The first set of findings is the relationship between wages and human resource development, and how the pay rates are determined. In analyzing how employees weight various factors, we are particularly in the evidence of how important training and skill accumulation are influencing wage rates. So, as you can see from the graph, the average wage reported for employees in management position was 3 times the average wage for unskilled laborers. So, in the first part, when you can see one from 19 employees is the micro business, 20 to 79 is the medium enterprises, and 80 to more it's the large business. So, 96% is higher than the average reported for unskilled workers. The average wage reported for technicians was 110% higher. So, the wage here in the unskilled employees is about 150 euros, and for the professionals and management is more than 40 euros. About the Ministry of Finance in Albania, the lower wage that an employee can have is 180 euros per month. Survey respondents were offered a series of possible wage criteria and asked whether each of one influenced their wage decisions. Nearly 90% indicated that they used the qualification of the individual employee or skill level as a criteria to determine payment. But just 20% of the smallest establishment consider individual qualification when determining payment levels. As you know, in the small businesses, the employee just employ their relatives, sons, daughter, cousins, while in the largest businesses this is not the case. Across all sizes class, employers consider the individual's performance on the job when determining paying. This factor was selected by almost 3/4 of the respondents in each size category. Although performance of the job was certainly related to former training and skill level, most employers gave more weight to individual productivity than to going wage rates for broad categories of occupation when setting rates. These are the criteria to determine payment by size of establishment. So, As you can see, in the small businesses, the main criteria is individual performance, while in the large businesses, it's the qualification of individuals. This is not the case for the small business. Furthermore, it is taken in consideration women's payment related to the men in similar occupation. So in this graph, it's given women in production sector and non-production sector, just in services. From the questionnaires, it is given that 80% of the men average payment is for women. The relative pay rates reported were basically in the same in small and large establishments. The evidence does indicate that women could expect nearly equal return as their male colleagues. The findings indicate that workers in large establishments were a wide range of social services and benefits. 90% of large establishments provided paid sick leave, 86% provided pension scheme, and 64% provided free work transportation. As you have seen from the table, the paid vacations for the small businesses it's 40% and for the large it's 90%. While for the loans and for the transportation it's just 1% for the small businesses and 64% for the large one. And 60% is for the loans given to their employees and 50% is for the large businesses. As a conclusion, we can say that wages and human resources development have to do with the ways of how the wages are defined. Employers consider a range of factors when setting starting wages for various occupation or skill levels, as well as for rates of pay increases over time. The productivity of the individuals is measured by their qualifications, their trainings, their previous experience, or data of their job quality. Pay rates were determined by overall business performance, indicating that the benefits of high growth or rising profits, or the inverse, would be reflected in pay rates. About half of the employers in each size category indicated that they had paid attention to what their firms in the same area paid workers in similar jobs when deciding wage rates of their own employees. Only limited data were available on whether or other kinds of worker characteristics impact wage determination. Women earned 20% less than men for the same work. The relative pay rates reported were basically the same in small and large establishments. So, using survey data, we would like to conclude that the employers need to use a flexible and responsive wage system that can help businesses to compete more effectively, so they to earn a sustainable competitive return on their capital while supporting profit growth and rewarding employers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sorina. Right now, we are the fastest panel of the conference. If we continue like that, no, I'm joking. So, Greg and Sri, Greg at first and Sri aftermath, have the floor.
Thank you for your attention. Our study is in two parts based upon the same data. I was more interested in whether individuals in their places of employment would report behaviors of others or not. Dr. Seshadri was more interested in maybe pure HR issues, so our situations vary that we will discuss. In interest of time, I'll just quickly run through a brief literature review. In essence, we found relatively little research done in this area, in the geographic area as well as the topic area. Some of the findings indicate that investigating ethics and issues that are similar is a relatively recent phenomenon versus the United States. Codes of conduct are becoming more prevalent. in this geographic area, however, and we had, I think, a previous presentation today that talked about social responsibility, conduct, and issues such as that. So it seems to be moving to the forefront. Unethical practices certainly have costs to them. And we, based upon Dr. Seshadri's teaching in Bulgaria, we were interested in these topics in U.S., but we also speculated, perhaps to the extent of hypotheses, that Bulgarians and Americans may behave differently. So we attempted to fill some of the research gaps. We attempted to measure behavioral intentions. Much of the previous literature measured ethical attitudes and those things. Very few studies we found for this geographic area really asked, what would you do in a particular situation? And we couldn't measure behaviors, so we used behavioral intentions as proxy for that. We wanted to measure then ethical behaviors, behavioral intentions of Bulgarians as well as U.S., and be able to make comparisons between the two. And so we're not really looking at more ethical or less ethical. We're simply trying to identify, are there differences? Our research was survey design. Sample sizes were 1,081 U.S. and 181 Bulgarian. Surveys were administered in university classrooms in both of the countries. Response rates, therefore, I think were high, had essentially captive audiences, so over 90% in both countries. One of the more difficult tasks was creating vignettes or scenarios, which are commonly used for this type of research, that would be understandable to people from both countries and would be within their frames of reference, would have meaning to them. So that took some time and multiple pre-tests and assessments of reliability and so on. We then used chi-square procedure in SPSS to determine if there were significant differences between respondents from the two countries of interest. I looked at 4 different dilemmas that, again, related to reporting others' behaviors. And so the first one was your coworker is padding his or her expense account. Would you report that person? Second one, your supervisor was dumping industrial waste. Would you report that person? Third, a fellow associate was pilfering from your store, and that could negatively affect your own and other employees' bonuses. And the fourth one, your boss or supervisor was violating safety codes. So I tried to look at 4 different areas where possible reporting could occur, and a variety of people, I guess, might be harmed in the different situations. Situation 1, coworker padding expense account. 32% of the U.S. respondents would report. 18.5% of the Bulgarian respondents would report. And this difference was significant at the 0.05 level, or 0.000 in this case. And so U.S. significantly more likely to report coworker. Situation 2, your supervisor dumping industrial waste into the river. 72% of U.S. would report the incident. Roughly 80% of Bulgaria respondents would report the incident. And again, statistically significant results at the 0.05 level. And so Bulgaria respondents significantly more likely to report supervisor. Situation 3, associate pilfering from your store, and again, perhaps negatively affecting employee bonuses. U.S. respondents were almost equally split. Roughly 50% would turn the associate in, roughly 50% would keep quiet. Bulgarian respondents, 39% would turn in the associate, and 61% would keep quiet. And so again, statistically significant differences in this situation as well. And so U.S. significantly more likely to turn in associate. Then the final situation I looked at, there was not a statistically significant difference between respondents from each country. This was the boss blocking fire exits that violated safety codes. U.S. 60% would report their boss. Bulgaria respondents 58% would report their boss. So majority of respondents from both countries would report the boss. My basic conclusions for my part were, in general, many respondents from both countries indicated they would behave in ethical manners in most situations. However, a couple of noteworthy items were in situation 1, most respondents would not turn in the coworker padding expense accounts. And situation 3, many of the Bulgarian respondents would not turn in a fellow store associate engaged in pilfering, even when that would negatively affect their employee bonuses. Significant differences between countries were found in 3 of these 4 situations, and so at least partial support for hypothesis about differences. And the nature of the differences indicate, as does other ethics literature out there, that behaviors in ethical situations may be very context specific. So I hope that was fast enough. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll continue the same research that Dr. Brockmeyer presented, and I will add some more situations. Won't go back to the lit review that he talked about. Generally, we have found that there's very little research done on business ethics in this part of the country, in the South, in the New Balkan countries. There's a lot more desire to do that. If you look at the Chamber of Commerces in various countries, in Bulgaria, etc., they now have small committees that actually engage in measuring ethical behaviors and have policies on business ethics. So it's kind of an interesting time to do this. And I believe this is the first of its kind in terms of empirical research. So hopefully we'll be able to do this over the long term and look at longitudinal changes. So our objective in this particular case was to see if there's any cross-national differences in the context of human resources between Bulgaria and the United States. And it's particularly interesting since Bulgaria has recently joined the EU in 2007, and this data was collected around 2007, 2008. So it's kind of recent, so we'll see how the joining changes after a few years. So again, quickly to recap, we had a large number of US students, 181 Bulgarian students. I might add that they were all business students, so within the context of business. The vignettes, of course, we made sure that everybody understood the language and understood the situation before we implemented the survey. We did a chi-square analysis on these, and so I'll kind of, oh, that doesn't look right. There we go. So one of the first questions we asked in the HR was about discrimination. And discrimination is a big topic in the United States. And the United States, there are some legal issues when it comes to discrimination. One cannot discriminate on age, race, nationality, gender. And so we asked both the countries, and we found that in Bulgaria, 40% of them would hire the person who discriminated, which kind of is somewhat came as a surprise, but it is statistically significant at 0.02. And in hindsight, maybe the U.S. has been dealing with discrimination for a much longer time, and the students are a lot more sensitive to discrimination. Okay. Our next scenario was, would you hire somebody who has not been completely honest, hasn't revealed their past performance, hasn't revealed being fired from their previous employment? And again, we find that among Bulgarians, statistically significant, 40% almost said, yeah, they would hire the person even if they did not completely inform about their previous employment and being fired for the previous employment. In the United States, it was only 30%. Okay, our third scenario was, you give a test to a person and the person scores very low on the test, but you think he or she would be a good employee. Would you hire the person? The policy of the company obviously requiring that you go by test scores. And again, we found that 50% of the Bulgarians respondents said, yeah, we would hire regardless of the test score, whereas only 15% or 16% of the US respondents said they would do that. So big difference there, highly statistically significant. And our last scenario was, would you hire somebody, your fiance? And I think we just saw a presentation in Albania where many small companies hire their own cousins and relatives, etc. It's another interesting thing. It's almost nepotism here. And knowing that this person will leave, would you still hire the person? And again, we find that about 35% in Bulgaria said yes, compared to 27%, statistically different in terms of responses. So we probably could say in conclusion that in most cases, regardless of the country, generally people tend to behave ethically. But there is a statistical difference between the two countries in terms of how they respond to each context. And it appears that Bulgarians put a lot more weight on personal relationships than the fiduciary responsibility to stakeholders. So, thank you.
It was indeed the fastest panel of the conference, but not the less interesting thing. And I think that we have 3 presentations which question very, very important topics. So maybe you have any questions or remarks? Please.
The last 2 presenters, I find it difficult to understand why that you question undergraduate students to derive business ethics. Now, the problem that I see with that is that some of these students may not have even worked at all. That's one thing. And secondly, even if they work, they have worked in low-paying, with high turnover jobs. Okay. And what I find a little bit difficult is as well to understand that in a real-world situation, there's power relations between the employer and the employee. Okay. So I'm afraid, can you explain to us how do you believe undergraduate students can capture the real situation in the world to be able to answer these questions, objectively?
Okay. That question has been asked before too, and a lot of research in business ethics actually do use undergraduate and graduate level students. And this was one of the major criticisms in the early part of how can you expect undergraduate students to relate to business ethics. And so they compared actual managers with students, and there are several research that compare the two and have found that there's really very little difference in terms of how they respond to ethical situations. And so now the majority of research does use undergraduate students. And I'll ask my colleague, Dr. Brockmeyer, to... Sorry, I couldn't see you. You were hiding behind this monitor here. So, yeah, I thought you had left.
You'll ask me to...
No, if you want to elaborate, but that's what the research has shown so far.
Oh, I think you stated it well, and there is literature out there. I think you brought up an important limitation to our study. Ideally, in the future, we would have some access to more business people and make comparisons between their responses versus the student responses within these particular contexts. So I think we can justify what we've done based on previous literature, but I think that is a limitation. I would agree.
Can I comment on that? Or?
Yeah, good.
Yes.
What about a suggestion that, as a first question, you ask the student, have you worked? What sort of job have you had? Okay. Yeah. And then forming a question based on the experience. And those who haven't worked at all, you should eliminate. Okay. So I think that will give you a more plausible argument. Okay. You are relating the scenario of, exercise that you're doing, with the actual experience of the student. Okay. I've done some research on education That's why
Yeah.
I'm just picking that recommendation.
Thank you.
On an experience.
Good
Yeah, I
point.
think that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Somebody else had it.
Hello, I'm Christina Sakali from the University of Macedonia. My question is for the first speaker. You said at the beginning of your presentation that Serbia attracted 1 billion euro of FDI in 2009, I think, and you also said that the needs of the country for FDI are for 3 billion euros. I would like to ask you, is this an official figure, and how was it calculated? How can you calculate the needs for FDI in a country?
It is information from government and Ministry of Economy, because our economy is in this very bad situation, and our country cannot take taxes from economy, from enterprises, because we have a lack of economy activities. And a lack of development of enterprises, especially small and medium enterprises, and especially in the sector of big enterprises, because after the 90s we haven't got big enterprises as in the period before 90s. A lack of big corporation, and we need foreign direct investments, especially greenfield and brownfield investment, to move big companies, and actually to move our small and medium enterprises sector to work for that big enterprises. In this moment, we took from International Monetary Fund 1.5 billion euros, because we haven't got money in our budget, because our economy and our enterprises doesn't work in full capacity. No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question, comments, points? Maybe I will ask one question, two questions. One for Vladimir. You pointed out the importance of education and training of the labor force. Is there at this very moment, any specific policies in Serbia in order to improve or to develop this kind of human capital indeed? And if you have any difficulties to implement these policies, if there are any.
Yes, we have a lot of difficulties, because I will explain in a few sentences. We have a lot of strategies. Employment strategies, strategies for improvement of high educational system, all of that strategies only in the paper, because we haven't got a good policy, and we haven't got a good management in public sectors, in ministries, in the government to implement that kind of strategies. And we have a lack of managers in our governmental structures, especially, and we have a lack of managers in our public sectors, public enterprises, and in private sectors. Exactly. It is the problem of our devastating higher educational system. It was devastated in the 90s.
Thank you. And I have also a question for Greg and Sri. Well, you make a quite unusual comparison between Bulgaria and the United States, which we are not used to the comparisons like that. But anyway, it seems to me very, very sound. We can question let's say, the methodology, or we can have questions about our undergraduate students enough mature to respond. But anyway, I think I found it very, very interesting. But I would like just to ask you a question concerning your conclusions. Greg, your conclusions, it was context that appeared as an important factor, maybe the more important. I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. And Sri said that personal considerations are something different, context and personal factors. And what do you really mean by context? Do you mean also values, representations, mentality, or it's geographical context? What does it really mean?
Well, I will try and give you a short answer, and then Shri can follow up. What I meant by context was that much of the ethics literature that we've read, I think we agree on this, is, I guess our slang English word is messy. There doesn't seem to be in a lot of studies a consistent pattern that people will always intend to behave this way or intend to behave that way. It seems to depend very much on the individual situation they are placed in. Again, lots of research in ethics is dealing with scenarios or vignettes and placing people in situations. So that's what I meant. I didn't mean so much the country, although certainly that's a main focus that Shri can talk a little more about. I just meant that the research is messy. Few studies I read, they find respondents in agreement, and every situation there's a nice pattern here that always follows. Sometimes people behave in some ways, sometimes they behave in other ways, and it seems to me to at least vary a little bit by context. Another confound certainly would be some of the personal issues that I'll let Shri touch upon.
By context, sometimes we also mean relationships between people, and that itself might have an impact. And in fact, I think we published one paper on the impact of relationship on ethical behaviors. So.
Any other questions? No? Nothing more? Well, thank you very much for your participation, for your presentations.